Oh, don't forget to sync.
Welcome back.
Hi! We still don't have an intro.
Our intro is not having one.
Wow, we're so special.
What are we talking about today, Taylor?
Well, Stephen, today we're talking about Epithet Erased. We want to convince you to watch the show, and the reason that we are talking about this on our booktube channel, we want to convince you to read, or rather listen to the audiobook Prison of Plastic.
We're going to be making this video basically for two audiences. Audience number one.
These are the people who came here because this is a booktube page, or because I linked it to my book talk TikTok account.
People who have never heard of this thing.
Yeah.
And are listening to us because we're here.
We're
for
here,
all
and
six
it's
of you
something
doing that, we appreciate you.
Yes, it's here. It's something to listen to. If you are a book lover, if you are an audiobook lover, I think there's a lot for you to find enjoyable in this piece of media we're about to discuss.
And audience number two is people who watched the show that Epithet Erased originally was, that original 7-episode run that they did, and never got around to the audiobook because, frankly, let's face it, the 7 20-something minute episodes free to watch on YouTube are a lot easier and more accessible to make yourself watch than the
a 9.5 hour audiobook that costs money and just maybe isn't what you wanted from season 2.
And for you, friends,
buckle up. We're going to try and change your mind.
We are going to try to convince you that the $12 that you could spend there is $12 well spent.
Very, very well spent.
Epithet Erased. So, Epithet Erased, created by Brendan Blaber, aka Jello Apocalypse. If you know him on YouTube, you probably know him from the So This Is Basically videos.
Animal Crossing is a game where you live in a town of cute animal people and do a whole lot of nothing.
The Jello Apocalypse YouTube channel basically has got like the content that made it popular in the first place, which is the So This Is Basically videos, and then the types of content that they're doing now. If you are a new watcher of Jello Apocalypse and haven't seen Epithet, you should watch Epithet. I know you might look at that and be like, oh, 7 20-minute videos of content. I don't know if I want to get into that. Listen, if you watched Miles is on Fire, you should watch Epithet Erased.
Epithet Erased, at first, it was a web series on Verve, Crunchyroll, and YouTube. And it was released back in November of 2019. It is now an audio drama that was released in December of 2022.
Or rather, the next part of the story is an audio drama.
Epithet Erased, Prison of Plastic picks up right where the show left off. It is available on Sound Booth Theater for $12, just under $12.
There's also a PDF that is available. If you go to Jello Apocalypse's Patreon, which is great if you need that for accessibility reasons, and even if you don't need that for accessibility reasons,
the
illustrations are adorable. And also, it's really good to just be able to support like small indie projects like this, especially in today's like publishing and production market.
Now that said, this is also, and we have to bring it up because if we don't, there will be people who need to bring it up.
Yes.
This work, both the show, the book, it is loosely adapted from a tabletop game that Brendan and his voice actor friends played together.
A homebrew tabletop RPG. They called it Anime Campaign. That was not planned. Listen, if you are an Anime Campaign fan, I am very happy for you, but we have not watched Anime Campaign, and we're not going to. We intended to experience the plot of Epithet Erased as is. There are elements both within the show and in the audio drama where you can kind of tell, oh, like this was adapted from like a tabletop RPG, the way that some of the set pieces are set up, specifically the way the show is animated.
The point is, Anime Campaign is a thing that exists. We're aware that it exists. We don't intend on watching it because we intend to consume the Epithet Erased work as it is being written. We don't really want to get spoiled by Anime Campaign.
Yeah.
So that's really the long and short of it. So, that said, a quick breakdown on why you should watch the show.
If you've never watched the show, why should you watch the show? What is What is there that is appealing? So first of all, if you are like a cartoon fan, like if you like Steven Universe, She-Ra, Owl House, anything like that, if you are a fan of like the modern renaissance of cartoons, there's a lot to love about Epithet Erased. It's a minimally animated show because animation is expensive and this is an indie project, but it is really, really charming. The character designs are absolutely adorable.
Yes.
Like, let's just show some sprites, shall we? Look at these guys. They're so cute.
Look at them.
I love them. I want to hug them all. They're so squishy and huggable. And also their personalities are really charming. That's really the biggest pull for me, is the strength of the characters.
Yeah, and they're brought to life really well because this is so minimal, it's a very voice actor centric production. Because the characters themselves can't really move a whole lot, the voices have to do a whole bunch more.
And it's excellent voice performance. If you are a voice acting fan, if you are a fan of high quality voice acting, and if you follow a lot of people in the voice acting community online, you gotta give this show a shot because it's a really great celebration of the art of voice acting.
As you might also guess from the name of the game it's based on, Anime Campaign, it is decently anime inspired. In particular, its power set is one of those, like, it's not like a concrete power set like Dragon Ball Z where the biggest number wins.
It's more like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure or My Hero Academia in terms of like how the powers work,
your weird
and how they're all
superpower.
Individual. Actually, it's kind of like Hunter x Hunter too, where like everybody's is individual.
Everybody's weird superpowers are designed to be just sort of a one-off set of abilities and to just be used in weird ways.
And also everybody's superpowers, the people who have them, are very good like portraits of who they are as characters as well.
This is all, and this sort of harkens back to what you were saying about like just sort of the modern cartoon renaissance. It is a found family story.
Yes, this is the biggest love letter to found family that I've seen in a long time. If you're a Leverage fan, you'll probably really enjoy the museum arc because the museum arc is very found family and also takes place in a museum. Gosh, what type of plot in an adventure story could happen in a museum? That would make me compare it to Leverage.
I do think the one thing, and I know I feel stronger about this than you do, Epithet Erased, the show, has its two arcs, the museum in the first 4 episodes and Redwood Run in the last 3 episodes. Because that first arc, the museum arc, is where all the found family dynamic is located, you'll find that most of the fan base is ride or die for the museum arc. You'll find a lot of people in the fandom joke there's 2 arcs, the museum arc and the other one.
We actually like the second arc better. I like the museum arc, I think, a little more than you do. But we both prefer Redwood Run over the museum arc.
Because it's not that I even think that the second arc is like a better story has better characters.
It's better written and it's better executed.
The show just becomes more confident as it goes along.
Yes.
And episode 5 is kind of that mark where they hit a stride to me.
Yeah.
It gets episode 2 is better than episode 1 and episode 3 is better than episode 2. But that's episode 5 where Redwood Run starts, to me, is where the show really hits its stride and gets like really good.
Yeah.
So I would say if you start the show and you're all on board with the first arc, by all means, that's great.
That's great. That means you're in, because the first arc, Prison of Plastic, the book, really picks up more from the first arc than it does from the second arc. So if you loved the first arc, great. You'll love the book. If you get the first arc and you're kind of like, I don't know if I want to continue this, watch the second arc. See how much better the story gets. And then we both feel the same way. And this is a fantastic segue. We say the arc 2 is better than arc 1. Prison of Plastic is better than both.
This is like classic anime fan fallacy. Just telling you, come on, One Piece gets great 76 episodes in. You just got to ride it out.
And I know how that sounds, and it happens in the book community the same way. I forget which series it is because it's not one I've read, but there's a really popular series, and everybody says, you gotta get to book 4, and then it gets really good. Now, for a book series, for me personally, I'm kind of like, I don't want to read 3 not very good books to then get to the good stuff. But for this, in which the good stuff gets there pretty quick when you look at the runtime of season 1. Please stick it out. Like,
think about it this way.
Give it a shot. It's really worth it.
Your time commitment here, because it's 7 episodes, each one is about the
20-ish.
length of a episode of a syndicated cartoon, so a little over 20 minutes. And they are on YouTube to watch for free.
Barrier of entry is absolute zero. If you are watching this, you can watch that.
Is incredibly easy to recommend. I think the primary reason we're making this video, and this is a good way to transition, her phone dropped to the ground. This is a good way to transition into the book. The big reason we wanted to make this video was because I know not as many people who watched the show are going to read or listen to the book.
And also, I think there are a lot of people who love books, who love audiobooks, who wouldn't necessarily think to listen to the book because they've not seen the show. The show is 1 hour of your time, and then you get 9 hours and 45 minutes of audiobook gold.
This is like one of the drawbacks of mixed media, because you've got show people, you've got book people, and then you've got like the Venn diagram between them, and that's kind of where Epithet Erased exists.
We want to get the people who are on the edges of the Venn diagram to come into the middle and enjoy the full story. Why you should buy this book. Buy the book.
Yes.
So, if you liked Epithet Erased, like you listened to us, you went and you watched the first season, and you're like, great, that was fun. Tell me why I should listen to the book. Again, great characters. You've got different characters. I will say, if you are an Epithet Erased fan who has not listened to Prison of Plastic yet, and you're really hoping to see characters like Sylvie, or Ramsey, or Mira, or Zora, I'm so sorry, none of those people are here.
Nope.
I am sure they will come back. You can tell the story is like gonna grow into this bigger thing. The MacGuffin of the show is called the Arsene Amulet. The Arsene Amulet has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on in Prison of Plastic. If that's what you're wanting, I'm sorry. You can tell we're gonna get there eventually, but this story is about our main character just kind of dealing with some personal stuff.
Kind of like, the bad news is the only returning characters are Molly and Giovanni, but the
good news is it's Molly and Giovanni.
That was what most people cared about anyway.
Yeah.
And honestly, Giovanni was most people's favorite character, unless you're like me and you're part of the Ramsey Stan army.
You will enjoy the characters in this book if you enjoyed the characters in Epithet.
I'm gonna have a lot more to say about just my particular taste in characters in a bit.
We are going to make a second video. This is the no spoilers why you should watch and read this content. We are making a second video that is our personal deep dive into what we love about the characters and what we think is going on with the plot. That is going to be full of spoilers. Watch this show, read this book, then come back and watch that video.
That's a good way to just go into, for what we can talk about here, the characters in Prison of Plastic, because there's a bunch of new characters. That charm from the show is being held up very well.
Part of that is because of the excellent voice performance. Again, you've got a lot of the same voice actors who you expect to see on Jello's channel, and then other voice actors who aren't as much mainstays on the channel, but everybody's doing an amazing job. You get a lot of great voice acting in this book, because the audiobook is a fully produced audio drama. The full cast is all voice acted. Every character, even bit characters, have a unique voice. It is narrated by Brendan himself, so he's the narrator. And then there's sound production, audio production, like music. It is really more like a radio theater than an audiobook. So if you're a radio theater fan, this is giving.
And honestly, that sound and music production is something that I'd like to talk a bit about too, because honestly, it's really well done. Because here's the thing about a radio sort of like drama like this. When you're doing sound design, there's a very fine line that you need to ride. You're looking at just the line between too much and not enough.
Yeah.
Because you need enough to enhance what's being brought to life from the page, what is being read, but also you can't have so much that you become distracting.
Yeah. We listened to a audio drama production of an Agatha Christie book recently, and it was good, but here's the thing.
It was a little overproduced.
It was a little overproduced. The nature noises of like the rain and the water were a little loud, and all of the men sounded the same, so you kind of couldn't tell who was speaking when. This does not have that problem. Everybody is distinct. Everybody's voice is very clear. Again, the original cartoon leaned very heavily on its voice acting for its characters anyway. way. So the transition from visual medium to purely audio medium is honestly not as rocky as I think some people might expect. And again, if for accessibility reasons or just for your own personal preferences, you feel like you need to have the words in front of you, that is available. Again, it's on Patreon. You can go, you can download it, and you can follow along visually with what you're listening to as well.
The music in the book is very good.
Yes.
The music, a lot of tracks have been sort of inherited from the show. And it's scored like a show in that you've basically got your collection of tracks and you're going to be using them for different circumstances. That said, this is a just under 10-hour production. Nobody in their right mind is going to say, let's score the entire 10 hours.
It's not like fully scored, but there's music when there needs to be.
There's music when there needs to be.
And it's never, for the most part, the music is not distracting. It is adding to the ambiance. All that to say, the audio production is really, really good.
Honestly, maybe this is because I'm kind of a book person, but I actually like this format better.
There's a lot about this format that really makes the story here shine in a way that, honestly, I can't imagine Prison of Plastic's story in show format. I'm sure it would have worked, but I think this works better.
Yes.
Like, there are elements, because even in an audio drama, it's a book. You're allowed to take an aside and to take a character and be like, we're now going to spend 3 minutes on this character's backstory so that you understand why they're acting in this situation the way they do. And now we're coming back to this situation. You can't really do that in a TV show. I mean, you can. It's called anime flashbacks, but a lot of the times those are kind of clunkily handled, and it just is so much more seamless in a book.
I could think of a couple of ways they could do it, but I think that what they did here, one of two things happened. Either this format ended up lending itself really well to the story that Brendan Blaber was telling, or as they switched to this format, Brendan Blaber just adapted very well to it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure which one it was. However,
I happen to know, because I'm a snoop like this, I've seen him comment on a video. Somebody animated a portion of the book. And I saw him comment on that animation, and he commented on it and he said, fun fact, this was one of the first scenes that I wrote when I was sitting down to write this story. And a lot of the structure of the book was in service of making sure that this scene happened. Again, I don't know exactly what went on.
Right.
All this to say, I think Brendan Blaber did a dang good job of writing a book.
Yeah.
Good job, Brendan.
Good on ya. You forced your ideas into existence.
I know, that's really hard. That's a really good segue to talk about the writing of this book for all you people who came to this channel because this is a book channel and because I pretend that I'm a book reviewer.
We pretend about a lot of things
If
here.
you are a prose person, you need to maybe not approach this audiobook the way you would approach a normal book. This was designed to be an audio production more than a book. It works really well as a book. Specifically, though, in the narration itself, because as far as dialogue, the dialogue is fantastic. The dialogue is unique to each character. All the characters are very well realized through the dialogue. It's obviously performed by their voice actors very, very, very well. But the prose of their narration is maybe simpler than what you might expect from a book if you were reading it. However, the advantage is you're not reading it. In all likelihood, you are listening to it. And the way that the descriptions and narration are written, it reminded me a little bit of Percy Jackson. Since those are first-person books, Percy is narrating the story himself, and he's a very, animated, character-driven narrator. Now, Brendan is the narrator of this, and he is not a character in the story, but the narrator's voice is very clear and very distinct. If anybody else narrated this book, I would kind of be like, man, the writing of the narration isn't that great. But because he is the one who is reading it, it's fantastic. Because he delivers it perfectly, partly because he's the one who wrote it, and he wrote it for himself to deliver.
There's a lot of, I like to call them Blaberisms in the prose.
I like your energy.
I like his energy. I love the energy. Yeah, Phoebe's got good energy.
Not even just that. I think the line that jumps out to me is something like, he looked at her like she had just thrown his dog into the ocean.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's a thing that Brendan Blaber would say.
He has
if you have ever watched any of his streams, you will recognize his voice.
Yes.
Not just because he's the one speaking, but you will recognize his manner of speaking from the narration.
Honestly, in terms of just like writing, that really works since this is an audio drama. So like the narrator's voice is very important in that. And then when we turn away from like specific prose to the structure of the book as a whole, for the most part, the way that this book is structured, again, really lends itself to the story very well, because we get, and you would have gotten this from a show as well, but we get to spend more time like stretching out these points. But for the most part, we're going back and forth between our main party, which is Molly and her friends, and then the party with the antagonist over here and who's hanging out around her. And we're kind of going back and forth between them. It feels really balanced. It feels really well paced for the most part. You've pointed out there are some times where if this was a normal book, if you were reading this conversation, it would be kind of like, oh, if you had an editor, they would maybe look at that conversation and be like, we could trim that. We could trim that. But
I think what it comes down to, because again, we said this is a very voice actor centric production, and Brendan knows his audience, and he knows that what a lot of them are here for is that character interplay. And you get these situations where there's just long drawn out periods of time where characters will play off of each other, even in moments where it doesn't quite make sense.
There are some times when it's very much Tolkien and we're walking through the forest, except there's always something fun happening because the characters are always doing something fun, even if what they're doing has no bearing on how they walk through the forest. It's still fun.
I'm thinking of one circumstance near the end of the book where they are like in dire peril and they stop to do that. And that it's just one of those things where I'm like, Brendan knows why his audience is here. And that's one of those things that, like, you were telling me about the producers on In Space with Markiplier said a certain bit wasn't going to work and that they should cut it. And Mark, who had complete creative control, said, I disagree, and they kept the bit in.
And it's everybody's favorite. It's the backer in reverse. If you've seen In Space, you know what I'm talking about, and you know that story already. If you don't, I'm so sorry.
But that's one of those things, because I can't say I'm certain, but I'm pretty sure Brendan did not like just write this out and then like not have an editor help him.
I'm sure that was edited, but they knew very well what moments. Does this serve the plot? No. Is it what the people want? And are we going to give it to them? Yes.
Right. And I'm not even saying that whoever Brandon's editor would have said that, because I don't know who they are either. But I do know most editors would look at that in a typical book and would say that's not going to fly. But for a production like this,
the specific medium of audio drama, it works.
Right. I think the structure of the book often lends itself really well to that format. And there's only just a few like points where it becomes a little awkward. I do think,
and really most of that is in the first third of the book too. Just like how the show gets better and better and better, and then the book is really, really good. The book itself, it starts good, but all the really good stuff is at the end. And also all of the roughest stuff is at the beginning. I'm not calling all of the 4 prologues rough, but I am going to call one of them rough.
If you read this book, it will become very apparent to you, if not necessarily from the structure, just the way things are laid out in the first sort of half of the story. This was adapted from a tabletop
RPG
game. They're basically
it's very set piece mini boss motivated.
Exactly. Brendan has like taken the set pieces from the campaign and translated them into like plot hooks. And it's not that like books don't do that normally. Honestly, a lot of them do. I think what it comes down to is like that first half of the book. I would both say the first half is weaker than the second half, but also that does not mean the first half is bad.
The first half is perfectly good. I am very nitpicky about Lorelai's prologue in particular, but for the most part, like, everything does what it needs to do. This is the type of book, it has 4 prologues. Before we get to chapter 1, it's like...
You say it like that. I think you've got that, and you get to the second half of the book, and that's where, like, most of the interesting stuff happens. The second half of the book, because, like you said, you've mostly got our one party and our other party,
and we're popping back and forth between
our
them.
hero party, our antagonist party, and then... In the second half, they finally get to the same location.
And that's when things really
And that's when friction starts
And that's
happening.
and this is an appeal of this book that we have forgotten to bring up because we have notes, but we're bad at following them. Because the big pull of the show is found family. The big pull of the book is dealing with your toxic blood family. Like, the relationship, the relationship that's causing the conflict in this story is the relationship between our main character, Molly, and her older sister, Lorelai. And this is a story about confronting the family who hurts you. And I think it was you who mentioned, like, a lot of other stories would maybe have this be the type of thing where it's like, and then it gets resolved when the sisters have a talk and they hug it out. This is not that type of story. So if you are here for, like, vindicating, like, standing up for yourself, like standing up to your unhealthy relationships and being like, no, I need to put my foot down and we're going to change this situation or this situation will not be anymore. Just that whole element is so well explored, and it's really hard to talk about without spoilers, but basically Lorelai is an excellent antagonist and an excellent foil to Molly, and everything about their eventual point of contact is very, very well done.
I hate that so many stories really want to simplify what it's like to have toxic family members and to deal with that. When, if you're going to be dealing with something like that, it's going to get messy.
Yeah.
That's just the way that it's going to be because things are going to break.
And sure, when you and your sibling fight, you're not actually throwing magic spells and fireballs and dragons. But when you and your sibling fight, it sure feels like that sometimes.
I think
like this book captures the feeling of no holding back fighting with your family members. And if you know what that's like, it is messy and it is done really, really well.
Another thing I think is worth noting, because again, this is on that toxic family bent. Our antagonist here is both absolutely, undisputably in the wrong and also very sympathetic.
If you love sympathetic villains who are still allowed to be villains, this is the book for you. Lorelai is great as a villain.
She is deserving of sympathy, but undeserving of forgiveness that is not directly proffered by those who have been victimized by her.
Yeah.
And that is something that I find very well executed in this book. This book does a very good job presenting a situation with someone who, like it does not give her a freebie. This is not like one of those situations where, like, what's that one ProZD sketch with, like, Vegetalo
yeah,
who, like, killed the main character's father or whatever.
And now we're all friends.
And now we're all friends.
And we're just not going to talk about all the harm that was caused. No, we are going to talk about the harm that was caused.
Right.
And you don't get to reconcile with me until you face what you have done to me.
And that's something that this book, if that's your jam, if that's something you want to see, this book does that incredibly well.
So there's a lot more that we could talk about, obviously. We told ourselves that we were going to make this video short, and we're still going much longer than we planned to. Again, we are going to make a full, I don't know how long it will be, probably way too long, but we are going to make a full, like, character and plot analysis video that is about both season 1 of the show and the book, and just getting into all the nitty-gritty of everything we love about it. If you are a fan of the book and show already, stick around and watch that. We would love to have you. If you have not watched the show and read this book yet, go and do that, and then come back to this channel and watch that video. We'll probably release both of these around the same time, so it will be in the description. Watch Epithet Erased and read Prison of Plastic, or listen to it, or read it and listen to it. If you have the means, I would highly encourage you to both purchase the audiobook and subscribe to the $10 Patreon tier for at least 1 month so that you can download the PDF. Because again, I said it earlier, I will say it again, it's really important to support these smaller studio independent creations. You know how it is right now. We've got writers' strikes happening. There's so much discourse going on in the publishing industry right now. And projects like this are telling stories that mainstream media corporations and publishers aren't telling necessarily. And I think that that's really worth supporting. So if you've got the extra cash to spend on this, I highly encourage you to do both. But even if you can't, like $12 is not that much to save up for a very good, again, almost 10 hours worth of excellent audio content.
This book is really good. It's worth your time. I know a lot of people watched the show, and not as many people were going to read the book, because that's the way these things work. Not as many people read the book. Everybody waits for the movie to get made. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those situations where, like, no, this is what we're getting. And it's worth it. If you are in this fandom and you haven't listened to this audio drama, it's absolutely worth your time. I think it's every bit as good as the show you loved, and better. Mm-hmm. And you should give it a shot.
The fact of the matter is, you're like, well, this is what we're getting. Especially, again, like, this project was kickstarted, and that's going to if we want to see the story of Epithet Erased finished, if you want to see those characters from season 1 who are not in this book to come back and to have their stories told, and to have the overarching MacGuffin story of what's going on be finished, we need to support the project. We'll put all the information of how to get the book, how to support the creators, how to support the Kickstarters. That will all be in the description as well. Oh gosh, you know what else is down there at this part of the screen? There's YouTube buttons. You can click on them. They do YouTube things. One of them is called subscribe. One of them is called like. I know at least some of you came here from TikTok. Wow.
There's a bell, too.
This is YouTube. You can click a bell.
I've heard the bell does things.
It does things. We don't know what, but they do things.
Anyway, go have fun reading something. This specifically. Come on.
Go read this book. Go listen to this book.